Good evening, this is vk3sl and welcome to the evening program. Test missions here on 160 and also on UHF, streaming online as well. And that's the place to go if you wish to be entertained. Just dial us up on YT and it's all happening there. Anyhow, we're slowly firing things up here, getting organised, and we have a few themes to unpack tonight, so looking forward to it. And we'll usher in Mr. JR. Frank will be with us probably in about 20 minutes, half an hour, thereabouts. Play a few 78s first, though. We'll get the ball rolling. Something from the 20s. Time-honoured tradition is to feature something from that decade. In this case, it's an acoustic 78 from 1924, I think. I think it's acoustic. We'll find out in a moment. It's the house band from Brunswick at that time, Carl Fenton and his orchestra, and a track called Wildflower. VK3SL. Wasn't a bad frequency response on that acoustic record. A very late acoustic made for Brunswick. 1924, Carl Fenton's band, and Wildflower. Could even hear the piccolo there. I was wondering if they were going to take off in the last chorus, as often was the case on those earlier discs, but no, they stayed well and truly in their metric. But yeah, interesting to listen to them and trace the evolution of syncopated music. Not much syncopation there, but that's the way it was. Now, what I would like to do is sample something from Mr. Stew's archive. These are recordings of Edison cylinders, which come up really, really well. They've been re-equalized, and it's just staggering what a wide frequency response these recordings have. In fact, I'll probably feature a whole stack of them on the weekend on one of the afternoon sessions, but I just thought I'd present one or two, especially recordings made in France around the turn of the century. Now, this record would have to be close to 120 years old, and this just beggars disbelief what good quals they have. So tune in, vk3sl.
El Correo, polka, exécuté par les solistes de la garde républicaine. Record Edison.
There was an Edison cylinder from back about 1903, thereabouts. It beggars disbelief, doesn't it? I mean, incredible fi from 120 years ago. Staggering stuff. They just never cease to amaze me, those recordings. There's lots there. I'll play another one now. This one here is a little bit of ragtime music. This is another point of intrigue, is hearing music of a syncopated nature. And I think this one's actually with a band, if I remember correctly. It's 12th Street Rag. And let's have a listen to ragtime music from similar period. vk3sl. Well, it's almost as close as you can get in recording to the inception of modern styles of playing, syncopation in music. And when you think of it, the musicians on that record were probably born, well, could be 150 years ago. So, or more. It's incredible. So, yeah, fascinating stuff. And there's a lot there, and I'd like to sort of exploit this much more because I'm interested. There's another one here while we're at it. Another ragtime offering. I can't quite see the titles from where I'm sitting here. I've just queued these up. So we'll just we'll go with the flow. But more ragtime music. vk3sl testing. Ah, there we go. That was an Edison cylinder. I think it might have been an Amberol, that one. But going way back to the early days of the century, and such presence. I could just feel those transients jumping out of the speakers here. It's incredible. And I look forward to hearing a lot more of those. And excellent collection, which really tell a story, and a technical story as well as a musical one, when you think of the how well they were captured And Mr. Edison had it all worked out with his oil damping and the wax cylinders in particular captured an excellent result. Now, what we'll do is have a listen to something from the tradition of the 7 great singing stars of Shanghai in the 1930s, 40s, thereabouts, and we've been recent times listening to Li Zinglan, but today we'll hear another. This one is Gong Quixia. Gong Quixia, aged 1918 to 2004, Chinese actress and singer, it says here, and she became one of the 7 great singing stars. So, yeah, she made a number of movies, and she was a tap dancer as well. Yeah, there's quite a bit of info here if you feel inclined, but I think we'll hear a selection. Here's a recording of her from 1937. Gong Quixia, one of the 7 great singing stars of Shanghai in the 1930s. So we'll do another one, I think. One more, and then I'll start to get Zoom organised. I think we've got a reliable situation with emitters and systems. Hope so. And then we'll do our Zoom call to Frank. Here's another one. Gong Quixia. vk3sl testing.
往日多少的缘分，往日多少的苦痛，如今你成了过去的梦，你成了过去的梦，风中弹走了残风，你看了影里种种，如今风已到人间，满脸带上笑容。
It's Gone Quick Zia from 1940 Mumble. A bit sort of over-processed, those recordings. The pity we can't get a nice sort of scratchy open sound. Much prefer that than muffle missions, but never the mind. Beggars can't be choosers, and if I looked harder I probably could find something online. But it's nice to hear these 7 great singing stars. We've only covered about 3 of them, I think. So there's a lot more. And there's heaps of hits. It's a big recording industry in China. Japanese occupied China in the 1930s. Now we're almost ready with Zoom. I'm a bit slow off the mark tonight. What have we got? A record of the Boston Promenade Orchestra. I think it's called Classical Jukebox. Now this will keep us going for a few minutes while I do a dial-up. vk3sl testing. The Boston Promenade Orchestra there, and their take on some classical jukebox faves. Now I'm going to turn the record over and see what's on the other side. There's Arthur Fiedler conducting that. Now on side B we have the Continental. I reckon that's worth a listen. Arthur Fiedler. Alright, we'll play this. I think we've got our Zoom message out. I think so. But I'll have to switch sound cards, but I'll do that after this record. So Frank, if you getting sorted there. We can, as soon as this record's finished, I'll do the swap. Okay, Continental. On an HMV. This is vk3sl testing. Arthur Fiedler and the Boston Promenade Orchestra there on an HMV 78, and it looks like we've got Frank in the room, so I'm going to swap over the sound cards. Won't take me long. I just have to stop the NR, unplug one and plug in the other, and then there'll be a new set of defaults which will line itself out. Here we go. It's considering. We've got to admit Frank to the room, switch on the telephone AGC, and the caller level's right. We are in business, I think, Frank.
Good evening.
Hello. Welcome. How are you?
Very well. Very well. Thank you. Very
Excellent.
well.
Oh, that's good to hear. All right. I think we're set. Good. Yeah. Hey,
Yes.
wasn't that a blistering program this afternoon?
Oh, look. Yeah, no, it just kept getting more and more interesting. That guitarist was amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Morse.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah, Mr.
my God.
CW.
CW, yeah, Mr. CW, that's right.
Oh, wow. It was incredible,
Oh,
wasn't
God.
it? Yeah.
It was incredible, and he had such a diversity of styles and
Yeah.
approaches. He was incredible.
Absolutely. Yeah, lots of imagination and just really excellent playing. I mean, just in every sense, it was full of, he wasn't resting on his laurels, that's for sure.
Far from.
It was really good. So I refer people to the log. It'll be up there. Hopefully it'll stand up without too many too much
interference.
Yes, well, yeah, that's right. Typically, when these things go up, particularly the contemporary programs, I've got to filter out a couple of tunes here and there.
Of course,
but that's a part of the mill. So hopefully that won't be too many. And it'll, but it was an excellent program, and many thanks to Mr. OP for his selection there.
Indeed so.
Yay! Well, so nice balmy evening, and we're sort of slowly. I fell asleep this evening. I just woke up not long before.
I've been on the verge all day. I had a what should we say, heavy day yesterday.
Yes.
At the lunch, which
sounded like it was an extended lunch. Lunch
Very
dinner.
much so. It was. We didn't have much dinner, but we had a very good time.
Excellent.
And justice was done to the occasion.
Very good. Excellent. Well, that's nice to hear. You got to let your hair down.
Oh yes, you do. But I'm afraid I don't bounce back as well as I used to.
Never the mind. No, we it's all in the moment.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
Everything seems like a good idea at the time. You know?
That's right. Hey, did you hear those Edison cylinders before? Just a few minutes
incredible. They're just remarkable,
Aren't they?
To get that level of quality.
Yeah, totally. It's incredible stuff. So that's another archive to exploit. So we'll sample some more. And particularly... Yeah, go on.
Sorry.
No.
Just a thought.
Yep.
What level of quality would Mr. Edison have heard from them?
Well,
in other words, what was his playback equipment like?
Well, to start with, he was partially deaf, so I don't know.
I guess I'm
putting that aside, I don't think he would have heard anything like that. I don't think. I don't think he would have had any idea that they would have had that level of that potential. I mean, they've been re-equalised, and that makes a difference. But
sure.
Yeah, they just lend themselves very well for tidying up, and they're they sound like electric recordings, and they were made 110 years ago. Yeah,
I know.
Incredible, isn't it?
Staggering. It is absolutely staggering.
Yeah.
I've got a new receiver actually, which is for a DAB and broadcast band, and it does internet and stuff like that, and it's got 2 speakers. It's a very expensive and classy thing, and the reason I'm mentioning it at all is that I play my 160 meters through it from the communications receiver,
right? And
the bass end of my audio now has improved dramatically.
Oh, really? Fabulous!
Yes,
that's great. So, listening to these missions has become a much more, it's improved in quals.
Totally. Totally.
Nice.
And the top end is better too. You have an excellent signal tonight.
Oh, good.
As usual lately, and
good.
It's a pleasure to listen to it. I mean, quite the content is always a pleasure, but the quality has become even more of a pleasure.
Oh, it sounds like you've got a good system there. So you just play through from another receivers into this, do you? Is it
I'm playing it from my ICOM transceiver. Into the aux in.
Okay. Just from the data output on your ICOM, is it, or from the?
No. There's an auxiliary output. And I just feed that through.
Sure.
Into the auxiliary input. I don't know how the impedance matching, how good it is, but it doesn't matter. I can vary the level of the aux in on this receiver.
Yes. Oh, that's great, Frank. Oh, well done. That sounds like it's working out really well for you. That's excellent.
Yeah.
Good.
I had another one which was far less good, but it broke. Mm-hmm. It totally went for a wreck last week.
Okay.
And it happened to coincide with the time when I'd sold one of my synthesizers at a fair price, and the dots lined up. So
very good. I'm pleased to hear that. Is most excellent. I should remind listener that if you're listening on UHF, you can also get really excellent quals on UHF by just using the data output on the set. So most modern sets do have data in, data out, and it's just a little micro DIN plug, and it offers excellent wideband recovery if you just use that and plug it into a little amplifier. So on UHF and of course 162, we're going fairly wideband, to say the least.
So there's really nothing stopping me from doing that now. I've just got to get the right kind of plug for the socket.
That's it.
The data socket, and
you might be able to get someone.
And also,
go on.
Test my signal level from you on UHF.
Mm-hmm.
I'll do that tomorrow. I leave. I can only transmit on either VHF or UHF. I can't. I can't easily no.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So, and I've got it. I have it set up on VHF in case I need to go onto VHF in the absence of the internet. Zoom not working properly or something like that.
Yeah, fair enough. No, it makes sense. That's good. Well, yes, I urge you to see if you can have a listen on UHF. Interesting to see what how it works for you. And look, all manner of possibilities now, and for listening in with modern receivers and data output. So, good stuff. Alrighty, well, ready for the ride.
Yes.
There's a few sort of themes to unpack, I suppose. One of them was I was really keen to sample some Javanese gamelan music, and it's a really interesting field. There's so much. It's so complex, so culturally steeped. Trying to unpack it, trying to describe it, unfortunately, sort of takes this. I think actually. It doesn't do anything for the music. I think it's better for it just to be played and stand alone without too much description or too much nesting, as it were. So I think the only thing I might mention is that there's two sort of intonation schemes, two scales that the gamelan music uses, and one's called the slendro tuning, which is very pentatonic, and the other one's called the Pedro tuning, I think it's called. I'll look it up.
Yes.
Pelong tuning. So two sort of tuning systems, which they use for the gongs and the metallophones. They use these metallophones like xylophones, glorified xylophones.
Yes.
And they have gongs, these instruments, and a number of other very exotic instruments which are part of the tradition of the gamelan. And, of course, gamelan's very much about ceremonial music. It goes way back, way back, about over 1,000 years. It's incredible. In fact, the earliest carvings and pictures of people performing this music go back to about 100 AD. So,
good heavens.
It's quite staggering, really. It sort of predates even in the Indian involvement with Indonesia. So it goes way back. So, and of course predates Western music in any of its forms. So all of the intonation schemes are completely unique to that period and to the influences they had. And a big part of it is about the way the music beats. So, you deliberately have out-of-tune intervals because they create these sort of beating resonances.
Beating resonance, isn't that? That's subtle, isn't it?
It's subtle and very, very effective. You hear it, it pulses. And so, look, there's just a few little thoughts. Before, I think we'll just kick back and hear a few examples rather than try and stop and start too much. And
look, thank you for that. That's very helpful.
Yeah, and it's just look, the only thing I'll play is there's a person here in Indonesian just describing the two tunings and the slendro and the pelong, and giving an example of each. And
great!
So we'll just sort of hear that. But look. It's all in Indonesian. I think she starts with the pelong. You can sort of hear in her native tongue what she's saying. Those two words come out. So
that's all you need to know.
It's all you need to know. But it just gives a little bit of a harmonic basis to the whole thing. So let's have a listen to this. It's quite short. vk3sl testing.
vk3 not.
Mencoba untuk mengenal nada dalam gamelan Jawa. Gamelan Jawa terdiri dari dua sistem nada atau laras, yaitu pelog dan slendro. Kita akan melihat perbedaan nada ini melalui instrumen saron.
So this is the pelog system now.
Berikut adalah nada-nada dalam laras pelok. G, ro, lu, pat, mo, nem, pi.
This is the slendro tuning now.
Berikut adalah nada-nada dalam laras slendro. Ci, ro, lu, mo, nem, ci. Itu adalah nada-nada di laras slendro. Dan ini adalah nada-nada di laras pelok. Demikian perbedaan antara laras slendro dan juga laras pelok.
So there we go. That's just a very sort of general introduction to the harmonic series that sort of underscores a lot of music from the gamelan tradition. Of course, it's expressed, in a far, in very complex ways. But
of course, but it really helps to get the basic scale. The slendro is very pentatonic.
It is. It's absolutely it is. It's essentially just the pentatonic scale that we know, but with slightly different intonation.
Yeah. But, and I know what you mean about the beats too. They vary from note to note, and it's obviously all very subtle and understood. It's part of the deal,
Yeah, and apparently those sort of subtleties, it's very peculiar to different provinces. So sometimes the relative intonation between the intervals can be quite markedly different, even if it sort of broadly fits the pelong and the slendro sort of form as well. So it's something that. Is interesting, as well as the they've got their gongs. They've got a whole range of these beautiful brass gongs, which sort of they delineate. They're like catalysts. They give the music sort of reference points, and then there's a range of other percussive instruments as well. So look, we'll follow on and just have a listen to just a few examples, maybe just 10 minutes of Javanese gamelan music, various things. The first one is, I'll play actually there's two examples of a pelong. Look, I won't even try and just say what they are, but it's more of the pelong tradition. So we'll hear these, and they're courtesy of the Northern Illinois University. They've put up a ethnic musicology sort of site with some reasonable recordings. So that's the source of these. So I'll just get these queued up, and we'll have a listen. So this is vk3sl. We're just sampling tonight some Javanese and Indonesian gamelan music. It's a track called the Pouncing Lion, and using the Pelon tuning there. And
Yes.
so we'll hear another from the same source, and this one is entitled "The Angry Buffalo." Again, same tuning system.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see the use of metallophones, and there's...
They're like little bars, metal bars.
Yeah, they are. They're like xylophones, but very elaborate.
Yes.
And there must be at least 10 of them. And they use little metal hammers, and they're poised just above the bar, so that it's a very subtle sort of movement. It's almost like a form of, well, it sounds like a form of meditation, really. But I think the whole stylized action is also very poised, and it's almost like a dance in just the way that they actually play this. And so you sort of see that, and they're using the other hand to dampen the ringing after each one, so that it's sort of like a two-handed approach, so that they're able to articulate without getting sort of too much. Or they can choose how much resonance they want. So
they want a cav, so one note doesn't run into another if they don't want it to.
That's right, exactly. But look, it's very beautiful. The sound.
You know how long roughly gammelins have been around? I mean, they wouldn't have had these things 1,000 years ago, surely.
Well, they sort of did. This is the thing. There's an etching. I was reading about this, and there is a carving on a temple in Java from about 100 BC, so about 100 AD, and it's got pictures of people playing the same instruments.
My God.
Yeah, in various held and chiming instruments and held instruments. And so and there are sets of gamelan instruments. I think the earliest is from about the 12th century in existence.
So they were able to work with metal in quite an advanced way.
Yes, and evidently, yeah. So that's
amazing.
And especially the bells that they use and the chime, the gongs. I mean, they're carved out of brass. So, and of course they assume a pitch, and they're like, it's like a very large form of the glass harmonica, like big shells.
Yeah.
And they can be struck at different points to give a different ambience. And,
okay.
So
but they'd still have to get the tuning
They
meticulously.
would, exactly. They've got to be shaped and tuned, and that in itself quite beautiful. They're like soup bowls on their back. And here's an example of some here. I think there's some on this, and so we'll hear some more from this tradition.
Yes, please.
we have it, an example live performance. I think in a temple, Indonesia. Someone was just walking around. It's what I've had the experience of hearing a group live. In fact, quite a few times. One of my workplaces engages a gamelan orchestra each year to play, and it's a very colourful event. I mean, it involves about a 20-member group, Indonesian group, and they inhabit a space and set themselves up, and they've got these beautiful, colourful, gorgeous instruments, and but the resonance, the sound is completely overwhelming. It is it's hard. You don't really get the overtones and the blend of sound through recorded media, but it's something else. It really is hypnotic. And
I could just imagine it would be.
Yeah.
It would be wonderful.
Well, look, we should see if there's I should find out if that group's doing concerts, because they are a Melbourne group. And
look, if they are, we'll go, eh?
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd be most interested. I'd like to do that, and we'll definitely go. And we'll make it a missions event. If anyone from these areas would like to come along, I'll put a footnote in the on the log and let people know. I will keep an eye open, because it is an incredible experience, and it's you don't really get the full effect listening to recordings, but you get a suggestion of course, but but it's a very intricate, array of sound sculptures and movements and stylized sort of choreography along the way. A lot of it's highly choreographed, and then they'll stop, and then they'll move into a different direction. It's something that incredible.
It has, sometimes it goes very quietly. You'll have a sudden outburst of activity, don't
That's
you?
Right.
It's sort of,
yes, and I think that sort of falls in line with poetry, storytelling. Temple. I think this music was played a lot in temples as a sort of precursor to religious ceremonies. I'm not sure to what extent it actually was a part of the religious ceremony. I don't really know that. That would be interesting to know. But I know it's about sort of creating an atmosphere or a scene, and So it's sort of music that's more ceremonial. Go on.
For ceremonial purposes, yes. A lot of the basis of religion of the religions in Indonesia is animism, I think.
Yes. Yes. So I recall reading that. Yeah. So
So they're no doubt they're acting, they're reenacting or enacting whole montages of events in a very detailed way.
Yes, that's right. And I think the stylized dance moves recreate that as well, because there's sort of things like leaping tigers and things which involve sort of slow motion gestures to sort of evoke a number of sort of interplay episodes with animals and with it's interesting. Well, look, it's another example. Go on.
When you listen closely, it's very clear that even though we talk in terms of pentatonic and stuff like that, they're not, the individual notes are not in tune with our direct pentatonic. I mean, they're slightly off. Off pitch.
They are quite, and very deliberately so. It's
I'm sure. Yes.
It doesn't really. It doesn't actually derive from our 12-tone even temperament notions.
No.
It doesn't come from that tradition at all. So it is totally independent of it, really. And it just so happens that the pentatonic flavour inhabits both spaces. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if the notion of pentatonic actually is more its origins are more from this sort of thing.
Yes.
It's sort of cross-pollinated. But
if you look at history and the length of time it's been around, that makes sense, doesn't it?
It certainly does. I think its greater meaning would be in line to the understanding the poetry and what the storyline, and because I think it is highly sort of choreographed to that end, but But yeah, look, there's another one here. There's an example of the Slendro its schemes. We're looking at the Pelog was the ones we've been listening to this point. So
yes, we have.
Yeah, so we'll sample this, and we'll hear a different, perhaps a different flavour. Yeah, and you could hear the Slendro pentatonic framework in that performance there. Yeah, it's
great stuff.
It is. It's so hypnotic, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
So
you just let your mind go and drift with it.
Yeah.
And it takes you.
It does. It really does. It's really. It draws you in, and there's some great information. Look, there's so much of it is deeply culturally steeped, and it would be pointless trying to read it or trying to define it beyond this point. But I urge people.
I'm sure that's right.
Yeah, if people feel inclined, there's a really, just looking up gamelan on the big W on the big wick, will provide a really great point of departure. I've been reading about it all week, but trying to sort of describe this level of complexity of instruments is pointless, really. So we'll probably leave it at that. And it'd be nice another time just to sort of play a whole half hour of it, and it'd be interesting to know the music that you heard, Frank. You said that you heard some gamelan music, or you got an album or something.
I've got an album, yes, I have. I bought it in the 1960s, a long time ago.
Right.
I've had a strong interest in sort of all types of music, as I think you probably know by now.
Sure.
Since I was a kid, and that's been stimulated by access to shortwave radios.
Yes.
As was the case with certainly with gamelan music. And I bought this. It's a vinyl recording.
Yeah.
Micro Groove, and it's lovely. That's right.
Well, it'd be good to maybe in time we can organise to make a dubbing of it, and then
absolutely.
Yeah. So look, next time you're over, we'll bring it and we'll make a dubbing, and then we'll have another session. This can be sort of the preempt, and then that will feature your album, because I think it'd be nice to have the personal connection, if you know it, of that particular album, and
I do.
And that'll have its own sort of story as well. There's not a huge amount on YouTube, interestingly. There is a bit, but a lot of it is just people going into ceremonies with a handheld recorder, and which is sort of okay, but there's not that much professionally recorded gamelan. I mean, there is quite a bit, but it's not as much as I would have thought. Not at a glance, anyhow. Maybe if I look deeper, there'd be more material, but it's interesting. And what another subject is, of course, how gamelan music influenced Western music, and that's another interesting tale in itself. And there is some examples of Debussy's music. Debussy went to a World Trade Fair, I think, in 1889, I think, thereabouts, and he got to hear Javanese gamelan music, Slendro music, not unlike what we just heard, and that inspired him, and he used some of the ideas in one of his compositions. I'm just trying to find it now. Music of Mr. Debussy. If I can, here we go. It's the Pedagogues from the Estampes, 1903. Now we've got a couple of versions of this. One has actually been played on sort of xylophones and it's been reappropriated, and then the original's on the piano. So I'll play the piano first, and then, or maybe a sample of the piano. I won't, maybe it's not time to play it all, and then we'll hear it played on vibraphones and so on. So just to sort of create a bit of a picture here. So Debussy was one of the first Western composers to draw directly from this tradition. So from, as I said, from his experience in 1889. Yeah, so let's have a listen to Mr. Debussy, Padog from the Estampes, 1903. So we'll line it up and have a little listen.
Okay.
vk3sl testing. music of Debussy. And
yeah, I think he picked up on some of the vibe of it.
yes, he did. Certainly the pentatonic elements of it. And,
Yeah.
And the spaciousness of the music, I think, is...
Yeah, the spread. I think he got a bit of the spread, didn't he?
Yeah, I think so. So that's considered to be one of the first sort of examples of a homage to an Eastern tradition. And that was... there's another example here played... I won't play the whole thing. I'll just give a short snapshot of this. But here is the same work played on... I'm not quite sure what instruments they are, but we'll on tuned percussion anyhow.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, I found that performance really luring, the music of Debussy.
It certainly improves it, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. It really adds, they can really do so much more by differentiating the textures and I spied a marimba and a vibraphone and xylophones in that ensemble. And,
yes.
Yeah, but a lovely sort of wash of sounds there, music of Debussy. Now, pagode, I think, is a form of pagola, or the sort of layered architecture, construction, like a temple with different layers, I think, is the...
is that what differentiates it?
Yeah.
Pagoda? I always wondered.
I think that's what it is. And estamps, of course, is prints. So, a series like of little vignettes, little snapshots, and work that Debussy wrote in 1903.
Well, I loved that. I mean, that really did draw me in. I kind of figured that was more how Debussy was imagining it to be,
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, it's probably closer to the sort of authentic sound that he heard, anyhow, simply by virtue of just mallet-struck percussion. But,
Indeed.
Yeah.
And getting that lovely wash. He's the master of the wash, isn't he?
He certainly is. You get these washes of colour. Oh, I love it. And, fascinating. So, that's an example, probably the earliest example of gamelan music sort of being reappropriated in Western culture. And
there is a composer, sorry to interrupt.
No, please.
In a 20th century composer, I think he might be American, and his last name's Harrison.
Yeah.
I think it might be William Harrison, but I'm not sure on the first name, who has written Indonesian style music, very deliberately Indonesian.
Oh, really?
Style, and I think he lived in Indonesia for a long time, and I think he incorporates the gamelan itself into some of his work.
Oh, how about that? Oh, I've just done a little search on this. Indonesian gamelan medleys. Harrison, Lou Harrison, gamelan music?
Yeah.
Okay.
What on? Is that Hawaiian? Did you say Hawaiian?
No, gamelan music. Lou Harrison.
That's him.
Okay.
That's him.
Wow, and here we go. Here's a concerto for piano with Javanese gamelan. Hey! Oh, wow, I want to hear this.
Yeah.
This will be good. I'll hear a bit of this. This will be great. Wow, Lou Harrison. This is, he's unknown to me. Let's have a listen. We'll dial it up now and go with the flow.
Hearing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And it looks like there's a number of compositions of his. So we'll just sample this. Yeah.
But this is his forte. This is around Indonesian music. He obviously loves it. And as I say, I think he lived there for a good part of his life.
Okay. Oh, that's fascinating. Alrighty. Let's have a listen to a little of his concerto for piano with Japanese gamelan. vk3sl testing. Well, it certainly has a timeless quality to it, that work
Oh,
by Lou Harrison. Wow, it's really effective, isn't it? The way he interwove the piano with the gamelan.
I think so.
Pentatonics abound.
Yes.
It's sort of got a cyclic momentum, doesn't it? It just sort of keeps just redressing. I find that, really, it's very hypnotic, amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought he picked up on the spirit of the gamelan very well. It used it quite well.
I agree. Yeah, that middle section was really, it just had its own life, really. And then the piano sort of emerged from it. It was very organic.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, nice to hear. That's great. I had no idea about Lou Harrison. Thanks for mentioning him. That's great. Another one is another composer who drew inspiration was John Cage, because he explored quite a bit of prepared piano. So he would typically put things between the strings and change the piano, put drawing pins on the hammers and bits of objects in between the strings, and completely alter the sound of the piano. And sometimes with the intent for it to sound a little bit like Indonesian music.
Yeah, I think so.
So
it was. You wouldn't want to let him anywhere near your piano, would you?
No, I think he had a certain destructive element, but that's not what he did. Now here he is. We'll just hear a little snippet, just a one minute snippet from Sonata Number 5 by John Cage, a work written in 1948. And the prepared piano, and I have to say, this poor Steinway, this beautiful concert Steinway, has been, what shall I say, somewhat altered.
Yes.
Let's have a listen. vk3 yourself. Music of John Cage, prepared piano. Now, what they've done there is they've got some rather large screws, wall screws, and basically just put them, placed them in between the strings. Actually, it was non-destructive. It just carefully put into position. And of course, they were put into places where it would change the pitch of the string as well as the timbre.
That's right.
So they're sort of dotted all over the place. And wow, what an effect! Interesting.
It's good to do it because you don't know what you're going to get till you try it, do you?
Exactly.
Really,
Yeah, that's it. So, that was, as I said, was really non-destructive. So you can go to town, you can do all manner of things, really. I suppose you have to get a piano tuner to come in afterwards. But that was it's interesting. That performance was very upmarket, in a big concert hall and with a lovely big Steinway, but with a whole packet of screws being sort of emptied into the strings. or I should say, customised. Yeah. just strategically
Carefully.
placed. Yes.
Carefully implanted. Yes.
So I wonder, here's the question, was it on the score? Did he actually say where to place the
Where
string?
to put them?
Yeah. No, too much.
He might have. I don't know.
No, probably not. He liked this chance element, didn't he?
I think so. You don't want them. That's right.
I think Mr. Cage would have rather throw them in the air and just let them rain down on the piano and let them find their place.
That's right.
I think that might have been the preferred approach. Who knows? But that's interesting to hear.
Stick a few tacks into the felts.
I remember doing that on to old pianos at various places, and I remember it used to be a church hall with an old piano which no one seemed to love anymore. So I remember getting out a packet of drawing pins and sticking them on the hammers. Yeah, it sort of sounded okay. It sort of sounded like a harpsichord. Really?
Yeah.
Honky tonk effect.
It would with a plucking sort of thing.
Yeah, that's right. It just gave a sort of metallic interface. But look, there's also a jazz group that looks like, I'm sure there are many jazz groups that have been influenced by Indonesian music, but one comes up in the literature is Don Cherry's Eternal Rhythms.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Do you know anything about Don Cherry? Is he a name?
No, there was a singer called Don Cherry. I don't know whether it's him. I suspect not. Anyway, I'd be most interested to hear a little.
Yeah,
of it.
look, we'll give it a sample, and it's a early 70s, I think. Can I get any more information? There's not much said here. First part of Eternal Rhythm, one of Don Cherry's masterpieces. It says cornet gamelan, flute. Bengal bamboo flute. Oh, right. So we've got a whole lot of sort of Indonesian instruments here. This could be quite interesting.
Yeah,
all right. Look, we'll sample this. This is a complete unknown, but it came up in one of the listings of influences. So always open to hearing new material. Let's give this a cue. Don Cherry, Eternal Rhythm, vk3sl. biodramatic. I'm sorry, Mr. Cherry, but yes, a bit of free jazz there. Well, it's not really free jazz, it's sort of fusion, and apparently it was recorded in conjunction with the Berlin Jazz Festival in November 1968. And,
yeah, interesting, I thought.
Yeah, look, interesting ideas. It's all about soundscapes, and he's certainly using. There's a reference to some of the percussive elements in Indonesian music, for sure.
Yeah.
In these ideas. So that record apparently features very highly in the avant-garde jazz series. It's not a style that I'm terribly acquainted with, but
Same.
yeah,
I'm not either.
No, but we have to sample these things, and eternal rhythm.
Remember Don Cherry? He plays trumpet.
Yeah, that's right. He's with John Coltrane and a few others. I think. He sort of had a presence in that movement.
Sort of reasonably well known. I don't know anything about him much, but he is well regarded.
Yeah, definitely. And that's right. He died in the 90s, I think. And he moved into that avant-garde sphere, and pioneered a lot of quite, in some ways, challenging soundscapes. But there's a certain aesthetic there. And
as you say, it's around fusion, that sort of thing, really. Fusion was the kernel of that sort of style, I think.
Sure. Yeah. Sometimes I find especially when it's got a little bit of a chaotic element, it'd probably be easier to listen to if I was able to listen to the whole thing and sort of get some, if it had some moments of repose.
I find fusion generally a bit challenging. It varies, but
sure.
It often, to me, generates into a sort of chaos that I find hard to come to terms with.
I find the free jazz movement really hard to relate to.
Oh, well, free jazz in all its freedom is hopeless, I think.
Yeah, it just becomes completely...
It's just silly. I mean, why shouldn't... Well, I think it is just people standing there and playing whatever comes into their head.
Exactly, yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it seems like it. So there's, that's probably the extreme take on this sort of thing. I mean, there's evidently structure in what we just heard. But,
there is. There's a player called Ornette. Have you heard of Ornette Coleman?
I don't think so. No.
He was sort of a very early component of pretty much free jazz,
right?
And he had a saxophone. He played alto, I think, but he had a plastic sax. He was well known for his plastic sax. But worth a listen for 5 minutes on YT just to get a feel for what I mean. Not now.
No.
When you,
I'll pick a moment.
pick a moment and see what. Because I think he's a very good example.
Sure.
Of going too far.
Yeah, that's all right. It's good. It's good to hear, because I think, need parameters, and it helps sort of understand the bigger picture when it's in extreme elements. But
right.
it's always good.
If you want, there's no harm in him doing what he's doing, and some people liked it.
That's right.
So why not?
Absolutely. There's always a place for things. And people are prepared to buy the records and listen and find a point of connection. Well, it's all relevant.
Absolutely.
So, good stuff. Well, there we go. That was look, it's just opened the door. It's just, it's I'd like to hear a lot more gamelan music, and I think another tangent would be to record the LP that you have, and just sort of you could probably relate to hearing it over the years, and and we'll see what else other material we can find for future missions. But I'd like to come back to this theme, because it's I find it just entrancing. I just love the sound world.
So do I.
It's beautiful. So anyhow, that's been most good. Now we've got a little bit of time. I was going to also do a bit of a thing on Mr. Scriabin.
Oh, you said that, yes.
Yeah, and what I might do is just sort of touch on the subject, and then we'll explore it more fully in our future missions, because we have sort of looked at the Russian mystics before, and Yeah, I mean, well, I think it was a Bukov, I think we heard about a couple of months ago. And he was the guy who wrote music in his own blood.
Oh, no.
Yes. And who Ravel championed. Ravel heard the music of a Bukov and championed his music. But poor old Bukov was just a bit nuts and didn't really cut it in the real world, sadly. And but Scriabin's sort of the same ilk, and just a megalomaniac individual, but incredibly talented, and probably one of the most gifted composers of all time. He went to music school with Rachmaninoff, interestingly.
Oh,
Yeah, they're in the same class, and he was also a very great pianist. And he was sort of exploring the avant-garde, or the newer directions of expressionism, in well before Schoenberg was, and in his time he was very misunderstood, and he was gaining his inspiration from his synesthesia. So whenever he listened to music, he'd have these visions. He'd see lights. He'd see colours. And apparently Rimsky-Korsakov did as well. I was reading about that.
Oh, good heavens.
Which is intriguing. Yeah. And they knew each other very well. But yes, look, Scriabin, fascinating guy. He had, multiple wives over the years and many, many kids. In fact, one of his kids was a really gifted composer of a genius level. And I was actually listening to some of his music, but he drowned at the age of 11. So that's Julian Scriabin. So that's a sad story. He died in 1919.
Terrible.
Yeah, really sad. And but Scriabin himself died in 1915. But there's a couple of just remarkable little anecdotes, and I might just play a couple of small things just as a teaser, just to paint the picture.
Whet the appetite.
To whet the appetite, yes. Now, what's intriguing about him was that he had this. He sort of went mad, really, and. He had this vision of the artist saving the world, and he wrote this work. Now, where can I find reference to it? I'll see if I can quote from something here. He started writing this huge, enormous this work to transcend time and everything, and it was to be played in the Himalaya. Under the Himalayas, and the work was to go for a week.
Oh, my God.
And with just enormous forces, huge orchestra, choirs, dancers, and it was just like a non-stop for a week was the plan.
Yeah.
So he had this sort of mystic vision, and it was supposed to be the apotheosis of everything, or usher in an apocalypse, and then the new world order was supposed to come from this vision. So he had these sort of messianic pretenses. He was really quite nuts. But but I just find this fascinating. I just think the whole thing, when you get these people who just had those such larger than life personalities, and anyhow, he wrote this incredible. We started writing this enormous magnum opus, and then sadly he got a pimple on his lip, and it became septic, and he died.
Oh my God!
He died within a few days.
Yeah, well, it can happen with septicemia.
Can't it? That's right. Just a pimple on his lip, and that was it. The end of Scriabin. So, and it's just sort of it's such contrast to this messianic figure who was writing these extreme works.
Struck down by a pimple.
Yeah, by a pimple. Bad luck.
It's terrible.
It's just, here we go. Here we go. In 1900, this is it. For some time before his death, he had planned a multimedia work to be performed in the Himalaya mountains that would cause a so-called Armageddon. A grandiose religious synthesis of all the arts, which would herald the birth of a new world. Oh gosh, what a yeah! It was called
Delusions of Grandeur.
Yes, absolutely. The work was called Mysterium. I love it. These people are just crazy, and
he must have been. He was schizophrenic.
I think he probably was. But
well, with the that's the classic delusion of grandeur.
Yeah, it is. Yes, a real messianic sort of state. But he. He did so much for music. His music's only really being discovered now in the last couple of decades. And in its time, people refused to play it. They thought it was evil music. They thought he was just so wacky. And it was
music of the devil.
Yeah, they did. They thought he was sort of some possessed weirdo, which he sort of probably was a bit, but, in a different sense. And, but he was writing the stuff that actually does make sense. It's actually nested in tradition. It's not just sort of random notes, and some of it is exquisitely beautiful. And he based a lot of his work around this mystic chord. He had this sort of notion of a particular chord extension using 13ths and fourths and thirds, and that sort of underpinned a lot of his music. Now, there's a little tiny talk. It goes for just a couple of minutes. It's one of those. There's a site called 12 Tones. This guy who does these. It's a bit of a machine gun description, and it's very technical on one level, but also you can tune into it on whatever level you like. It's very much the pitch that a lot of young people listen to this sort of thing. And anyhow, he talks about Prometheus and the mystic chord. Now, Prometheus was one of his was one of his works. And I might just sample a little bit about this the mystic chord, and we'll hear it described and played, and then maybe just a couple of quick little snippets, and then we'll follow on with a much more comprehensive missions. And I'll aim to finish well before 2 because I'm pretty tired.
Right. Yes. Yeah, I'm fading too.
Yeah, but I'd like to just sample this because it's a fascinating theme. And so Prometheus and the Mystic Chord and Alexandra Scriabin, vk3sl.
Hey, welcome to 12 Tone. Check this out. What is that? It's a chord, clearly, but it doesn't sound like any chord we've encountered before. This is what theorists call the mystic chord, used primarily by Alexander Scriabin, most famously in Prometheus, A Poem of Fire, which, if you've got 20 minutes or so, is well worth a listen. Pretty much the entire piece is built out of this one chord, which brings us back to our original question. What is it? Well, the simplest approach would be to try and find normal chords inside it, and there's plenty to find, like D major, A minor, and B flat augmented. There's even 7th chords, and if we include tensions, notes higher than the 7th degree, we can describe this whole thing as a single standard chord. Even if it is kind of a weird one. So is this what Scriabin was doing? Well, not really. You see, good analysis doesn't just define the sound, it also explains it. It tells you what's happening, but also why and how, and calling it this implies a lot of things that aren't actually true. Within a standard chord, certain notes like the root and the 5th are supposed to be especially prominent, while others like the tensions are less important, but Scriabin doesn't really use them like that. He played the chord in all sorts of different shapes, bringing different sounds out depending on what he needed at the time. So, okay, it's not a regular chord, we can't just stack it in thirds, but that's fine, we've talked about chords like that before, chords built from other intervals creating different harmonies. Is that what's going on here? It seems plausible. If we look at the original shape again, it looks like it's built entirely out of fourths, which would make it a chordal chord, which is still really fun to say. Chordal chord. This is the answer some theorists prefer, but it still has some problems. First of all, there's this interval. F sharp to B flat may look like a 4th on paper, but when you hear it, it's actually a major third, we're just writing it weird. And if we've got a third, the chord isn't really built out of fourths, is it? But that's not really the final nail for this analysis. Sure, we've got a third, but it's still mostly fourths, so maybe it's related to chordal chords, even if it's just a cousin or something. But again, we run into the problem of Scriabin's use. You see, when you build a chord out of an unusual interval, part of the point is the specific sound you get from stacking it like that. You want to hear all those fourths on top of each other, but for the most part, Scriabin doesn't give you that. He rearranges the parts freely to get a variety of distinct sounds using lots of different intervals to great effect, and splits the chord between different instruments and sections, making it harder to identify its structure. It's incredibly rare that you see an actual chordal voicing in his work, which makes this analysis pretty suspect in my opinion. But maybe we're looking at this completely wrong. Maybe it's not a chord at all. Maybe it's a scale. After all, Scriabin often used it to write melodies. This is such a common answer that we even have a name for it, the Prometheus scale, after its most famous use. It sounds like this. And when you look at it that way, it starts to sound familiar. If we just add a note here, we get a fairly common scale called Lydian dominant. So is that it? Have we cracked the code? Was Scriabin writing in Lydian dominant the whole time? Yeah, no. Wanna guess the problem? Yep, that's not how he used it either. Lydian dominant has a strong directional sound. It wants to resolve, it wants to move forward, but Prometheus doesn't let it. I mean, the piece moves, but not in the way a dominant scale implies. Furthermore, Scriabin enjoyed the idea of tonal ambiguity and often went out of his way to obscure the chord's true identity, which makes pinning down a key center incredibly difficult. So again, we're left without a clear answer, and that to me is what makes the mystic chord so fascinating. It's not that we can't analyze it with normal tools. Of course we can, but it resists that analysis. Every new approach we try gives us a new way to describe it, but none of them actually capture it. They don't tell us how it works, just what it's made of. And yet, it's not random either. There's a clear harmonic language that guides Scriabin's use, but that language is completely his own. It's nothing like normal music. In fact, it's so alien that to explain it, we have to turn to a field of advanced mathematics called set theory. Seriously, here's an entire master's thesis just about this one chord. But why does it matter? It's just a weird harmonic device that one composer liked using. Who cares? But while the mystic chord itself may just be an interesting curiosity, some footnote in a long list of things humanity has done with sound, its mere existence tells us we're not finished exploring yet. Maybe we never will be. There are still new ways to think about music that no one has ever tried, and they're just waiting for one of us to find them. Even in a world with only 12 notes, there's still so much work to be done. Anyway, thanks for watching.
There we go. There we have the just a take on the Prometheus chord, the mystic chord that Scriabin used as a basis for a lot of his compositions. And of course, for me, I just like to hear it, just hear the soundscape and not worry too much about the structure. But it just goes to show how it baffles academics.
Yes, and how deeply you can go into it.
Exactly, and how he alluded. See, he really was very successful in achieving the aim of not being put into a box or shoehorned into a particular ism. And I think that sort of, if nothing else, it just demonstrates that point. So look, I'll just play the last 1 minute of this tone poem, the Poem of Fire. It's just, look, this is incredible. This piece predates The Rite of Spring, so you've got to put it into context. It is quite out there and remarkable stuff. Alexandre Scriabin, but just check this out. It is really avant-garde music from a very early time. vk3sl. What I will do is I'll do a jump because it's coming in at the start. And it is an amazing piece of music, but we'll just jump. We'll just hear the last couple of minutes. Poem of Fire.
Yeah.
Wow.
Plenty of fire in that, all
It
right.
certainly was. But just what textures, what amazing sort of confetti of orchestral effects. Oh, I just find it so tantalising. It's amazing stuff. And there's even a reconstruction of what the notes he had for his Mysterium. This big piece he wrote for the to evoke the Agamemnon.
Yes.
I'll play just 1 minute of this. These are just little samples, which don't do it justice, but it's just for the sake of continuity, let's have a listen to a little bit of Mysterium, just the opening. And there's a description I've been reading of this as we've been playing it. His idea was to build a big temple in the Himalaya where this would be performed, and everyone was to be involved. And at the climax of the work, the universe would implode, apparently. That was the plan.
Oh, no. It's lucky no one let him finish it.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be here.
Just as well he got the pimple on his lip, maybe.
Just as well. Well, that's it.
That's right. And he even drew pictures of this temple. He had the architecture concept there, and it was to have lights, because he was synesthesia. He believed in sort of light magic, so he wanted this sort of array of, I don't know, some incredible electric show to set the scene.
Did he have any followers?
Yes, he did. In fact, a number of. And when he died, he was revered as being the next great composer, but never. This is interesting. It says, if I can find this, can I find it? I wish I could. I might have to defer that specific information. But now, when he died, he there was they had to sell tickets to the funeral. And because he was considered to be a genius, but it says somewhere here that never had a composer been so revered in such a short time and then so suddenly forgotten.
Yeah, okay.
And so, which is interesting. I think people just couldn't cope. There was a sort of a surge of followers, and it was gaining momentum. But then there were a lot of huge changes in Europe. He died just at the beginning of the First World War, and suddenly sort of disappeared off the scene. And then it became very his music became taboo. And then it really wasn't sort of discovered again until more recent times. Yeah, I'll see if I can find that information and relay it on another time, because it's quite interesting to read that he was very highly revered by a certain establishment who thought he'd completely invented a new musical language, which evidently he did. And he's sort of the composer's composer, really, in a sense.
Yes.
But but his most famous work that sort of has lasted right through is the poem of Ecstasy. And that's what inspired me to sort of check in with him, because Henry's been playing it daily and playing along with it. And it's a magnificent orchestral piece. It's just incredible. And I've got a recording of the last 2 minutes of it here. And if I can just quickly dial it up, I've got to find it here on the list. There's so much on the playlist tonight that I've got to try and get a better triage. Here it is, Scriabin, The Poem of Ecstasy. Again, a late work of his. But at the end, it's just unbelievable. It's unbelievable what he's doing with the orchestra. It's really sort of amazing orchestral colours, incredibly virtuosic, and it is larger than life, and it is really something amazing. So we'll sample this. We'll just hear it now, and and then another time we can feature his piano music, because there's a vast array. In fact, 90% of his compositions are piano works, and he started writing piano sonatas in the style of Chopin. And then by the last 5 sonatas were completely no time signature, were pretty much atonal, and using this new language, partly based around sort of those extreme chord extensions like we heard about before. Yeah. So
chord.
That's right. So there's only a handful of orchestral works, and but this one here is the extreme. It goes for 2 minutes, and it is something to behold. It's from The Poem of Ecstasy by Alexandre Scriabin. So I'm getting it queued up now. Won't be long. And here we go. This is the Berlin Phil, a recent performance. Final bars of Scriabin's Poem of Ecstasy.
That's about as loud as an orchestra could get.
Yeah, it is, and it's extraordinary writing, really amazing stuff.
Just incredible.
Yeah. So there we go. A taste of Alexandre Scriabin, and there's a lot more. The piano music is amazing, and we'll feature that another time. We'll do a proper expose, but I just thought that be nice to test the water and dip the toe.
Very interesting.
Yeah, but so what I will do is I'll wind up with his very first composition, which he wrote at the age of 10.
Yeah.
And then his son's composition that he wrote at the age of 10.
Oh, God.
And so we'll hear Mr. Alexander Scriabin in recording a piece written in 1870 mumble, and then
Yes.
a recording in 1919 just before his son drowned. So
yes.
and they both show great scope in their writing. His son particularly it picks up sort of where his father left off, even at a young age.
Gosh.
It's incredible. So the first one is a canon in D minor, and that's the Mr. Scriabin Senior, and then the young kid Julian is a set of 6 very short little preludes. So
Very good.
hey, so we'll wind up with that music, and thanks, Frank. Thank you.
Thank you as always.
Yeah,
Always
it's been good
Always
fun,
good
and
fun.
I've really enjoyed the gamelan journey, and we'll pick up and find some more. And
See where we could go with that.
Yes, definitely. We'll dub off the album. Yay. All right. Well, tomorrow should be on board tomorrow afternoon. There's a lot happening this weekend, actually. It's getting busier by the minute, but I've got that time reserved, so it should be okay. And
Good.
it might have to be a bit shorter, but we'll see how we go. But look forward to then. That'd be good.
Indeed, Steve. Take care.
You too. Thank you. And we'll look forward to your company tomorrow. Now,
I'll tune out as usual off YouTube and listen on the radio.
okay, no worries at all. And just greetings to, I haven't checked the listener file. I think there are a couple of listeners. And,
hello, listeners.
Yes.
Good evening. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. Alrighty, let's continue now. Firstly with the music of Mr. Scriabin Senior, followed by Scriabin Junior. vk3sl, thanking you, and until tomorrow.
Cheers.
Cheers for now.